Welcome back to an episode of Coffee and Coin. I have Gail and Desiree on the pod with me today. Hey, y'all.
Hello.
Hello.
This is going to be a very special podcast episode. It's our first ever Mother's Day special dedicated episode where we wanted to take some time to talk about a critical component in child rearing, which is the financial side of things, which is definitely not in a silo, right? There's money to do with how we want to raise our children, conveniences, different necessities, and different choices. So let's start by giving you a little intro to who these women are. Gail took her well circle in the spring of 2019. She is an OG, as in, this was back when we called the company a different name. We used to meet in person, 8 women at a time. We were joking before we started recording that in her particular well circle, I used to rent conference rooms in Austin and the venue canceled. And so I was super embarrassed, but I had to run this well circle from my home. So we would gather around my coffee table and talk about our financial aspirations, insecurities, and everything in between. She is a mom of one, a little boy who is 15 months old. And yeah, Gail, give us a little bit more intro into who you are.
Well, thanks for having me back. I've been on the podcast once before and have had a lot of really awesome life changes since then. I am a landscape architect and planner, and that becomes important because uh, basically the majority of my life used to be kind of dedicated to that and lots of hours, lots of overtime. And I am now a mother to what I would like to say is the perfect little human, and pretty much every priority that I've ever had has changed since then. So, yes, I have one child, may end up being a one and done family, and that is a ongoing financial and otherwise conversation in our house these days.
Thank you, Gail. And so Desiree took her well circle in the spring of 2022. She has been a very active participant in our community, a recent facilitator, and she is also a mom of one, a little girl who just turned 5. So, Desiree, give us a little bit of background on you.
My name is Desiree, and before I got pregnant, I was a mental health therapist and had actually just finished my internship, which is sort of similar to a medical residency. So it was a good stopping point for me. I thought I would want to keep working, but for context, in about a 6 to 10 week time frame, we bought a new house, and then I got pregnant, and then my husband got laid off, and then he got a new job, and then the house flooded in Hurricane Harvey. So I just was like, you know what? I'm just going to enjoy being pregnant, because we were pretty certain at the time that we would probably be a one and done family as well. So yeah, so been just momming ever since.
Love it. So, just on this episode alone, you've got a full time CEO, work a lot person, myself. You have Gail, who went from a self proclaimed workaholic to a much less part time worker. And then Desiree, a stay at home mom, which I love because I
Mhm.
want a diversity of thought and conversation around child rearing. There's no right way to do it, there's just the right way for us on our individual and household bases. So I think Desiree, that that context of when you got pregnant and all those things that happened, which were obviously big financial hits and occurrences, I would love to start with talking to you guys about your preparation financially when you were considering starting a family. Desiree, let's start with you.
Yeah, so we were kind of chatting about this before we started recording, but I had my baby in 2018 and then didn't take Wealth Circle until 2022. And so looking back now, I felt like I was really naive. You know, I just kind of had this thought of like, I'd heard people say, babies cost a lot of money. And I was just like, no, they don't. They're people. Like housing costs money, but people don't cost money. And I didn't really understand what people meant when they said that. But so as far as financially preparing, we knew that we wanted to have a house or at least a bigger home. We were in a one bedroom apartment right before we got pregnant. And we wanted to have a bit of an increased income and obviously a bit of a savings cushion. But other than that, yeah, someone asked me about this in our Wealth Circle breakout the other night, and I was just like, I just thought, you know what, I'm going to breastfeed, so I don't need to buy any food. So what cost is there? But yeah, those are the kinds of things we did to prepare.
That's actually really funny because I remember being shocked that it is so great. If you're able to breastfeed and that's the path that you choose, there really are no food expenses in the beginning,
Yeah.
other than for me, because I was voracious while I was breastfeeding. But Gail, what about you? How did you and your family prepare financially for a baby?
So I'm sort of the opposite of Desiree in that I got pregnant after having taken my wealth circle. And in my wealth circle, I had just come up with all of these goals. That was kind of the first time I ever really came up with goals. And so I had a bunch of different things I wanted to do. I don't know that most of them were tied to before or after family. We did know that we wanted to save a baby fund. I didn't know how much, and I didn't really know when that was going to happen. I just knew I would want some money in preparation for that. But I think our biggest thing was um, we got married in 2019, and then COVID happened, and we had some trips planned, and we were going to do these really fun international travel, and COVID was just like, no, you're not. So we waited and waited a little longer, and then I was 33 when I got married, and I kind of had this self-imposed clock ticking in my mind of like, well, I can't wait forever. So when COVID didn't look like it was going away, it's like, okay, well, I guess we're just going to go for it. And then we started saving a baby fund.
Okay, so Gail, how much did you have in that baby fund before your baby came along?
We had a goal of 15,000, wanting to have, cover childbirth. We didn't know what childcare was going to cost, and also wanted to have flexibility on my timing of how much I needed to work when I came back to work. So we had a goal of 15,000. We actually got to 17,000, some of which we still have.
Amazing. Okay. Well, I feel like we should just go ahead and get right into childcare because that really has been, I know for me, the biggest surprise cost, even though I had already heard that in the ether that get ready, childcare is really expensive, but I didn't know what that means. And now I know there's such a huge range depending on what type of childcare you pursue. And just on this call alone, I'm someone who has an in home part time nanny. Gail is someone who utilizes daycare, and Desiree is a stay at home mom. So, Gail, let's start with you. I'd love to know how you decided on childcare and what the financial costs have been.
So, both my husband and I work most of the time from home. So, we felt like something outside of the home probably made the most sense. And someone had given me the recommendation of, you know, maybe halfway through your pregnancy, start looking into childcare, which I would pass along that recommendation. It allowed us to do research into lots of different places and get on waiting lists where we wanted to be, not necessarily have to do the one thing that happens to be available by the time you actually need childcare. So we ended up at a place that we pay for full time daycare, even though I work part time. So I work 20 hours a week now. And we typically have my son there 4 days a week, but I pay for 5 because the 4 days kind of varies. And sometimes we need him there the whole week. But the first daycare we went to started out at 13.35 a month, and had recently been increased to, I think it was 13.90. And then just a few months ago, they sent out a notification that their prices were going up again. And his cost was going to go up to 16.90 a month, which kind of made us like fall out of our chairs a little bit, especially because we felt like the quality was going down. So I had previously, back when I was just pregnant, looked at another place that was bilingual, which is something that I really wanted, but they started at 12 months. Like that was the youngest the kid could be when they went there. So we revisited that, loved it from the second we walked in touring, and we are there now, and it's $11.50 a month, still full time, still all the meals, and we think it's a better situation. Still expensive, but not like fall out of my chair expensive.
You're going to fall out of your chair when I tell you how much we spend on a part-time nanny monthly, which is more in the $200 to $2,500 range, depending on how many hours we're using. And it was also interesting hearing you say that because you and your husband both work from home, it was nice to get your child out of the house and probably easier for calls and stuff like that. We both work from home and have our child, who's quite loud at this point. I swear she's more pterodactyl than she is baby girl, and also a nanny in the house. So it's a lot of people in a 1,700 square foot zone, but we make it work. Like nap time is when I schedule podcasts and or outside playtime. Okay, Desiree, talk to me a little bit about your childcare decisions. And the reason that I'm asking you guys this in the planning for motherhood portion of this episode is because what Gail said. She was looking around at childcare options when she was pregnant. I got the advice, but did not take the advice because I actually thought that that can't be. There's so many people having kids. There's got to be a lot of options. Maybe just the best ones are taken, but I can be flexible. To your point, like at least at first, and then I can find the best program and whatever. And then we couldn't get on any of the lists in time. So here we are. Desiree, what about you?
Yeah, I gave childcare absolutely no thought before my baby was born. Partly because I knew that I wanted to stay home with her at least until she was 18 months. I knew I didn't want to even try to go back. Um, and then when she was around 18 months, I started thinking about going back, but I didn't quite feel ready yet. And then when she turned 2 a couple of weeks after the COVID pandemic was declared. And so at that point, I'm not sending her anywhere, obviously. And we had already at that point, thankfully, made the decision to homeschool at least through preschool. And so it just didn't really feel like a necessity for us. And I later on tried to go back to doing mental health therapy, but that was during the pandemic. And it was just too much for me. It was too much to try and start my own practice and run my own practice and take care of my family's emotional needs during this, mass trauma that we were all experiencing. And so I was like, you know what? The only thing I've ever wanted all my life was a family. So I'm just going to enjoy my family. That was our priority when we got married. And so I was like, I don't need to do this. And so that's what we're doing right now. My mom does help us out. We're very fortunate that she lives literally right around the corner from us. I'd like to get to a point where we can pay her something for all the help she gives us. But yeah, we're very fortunate to have her around.
Okay. I love your story. I also think how lucky is your child that her mom is a mental health advocate and professional and someone who can, even that comment that you said about making sure that the family's well-being, emotional well-being is adhered to in the time of a worldwide pandemic and all the fallout and stuff that happened from that. I think so many people just blundered through and tried to pretend like life goes on as usual. And obviously, we now know that there's been so many negative effects of everyone being kind of alone, and just that is a big part of it, right? Like the ability to have our finances in order and our choices be made so that they work for not just like our mental well-being, but for the better of our family. So I love that you shared that, and your daughter is very lucky. I always joke with my husband, but it's not really a joke. I mean, this is my preference, would be that at least, because I want to have more than one, we'd really like to have 3. We'll see. At least one of them, I'd love to have just this purity of time with, to your point, like those first 18 months or something where I am not going back and forth between a computer. Because sometimes I hear them giggling outside my office, the nanny and the baby, and I'm like, can't I just pay you to do my job and I do your job? Because that's what I'd rather do. But let's get into a little bit about the cost of having a baby. So you have a baby, and did you guys prepare nurseries? Were there some big ticket items that you either bought or got lucky and got hand-me-downs? I know, Gail, your family isn't really in the Texas area, but Desiree, it's awesome that you have a mom here. Do you have additional extended family? Because for us, we were all on our own, and I was shocked at how expensive things are. And yet I was torn about some of the secondhand items. For instance, I thought I would be absolutely happy with a secondhand crib. And then when I started looking on Facebook Marketplace and they have all the bite marks around the edges, I just couldn't do it. So the crib we bought new, other things we got used. What about you, Desiree?
Yeah, so again, this is one of those things. We're pretty minimalist, I would say. And so for us, it was just a lot of things we didn't buy. I didn't set up a whole big fancy nursery. Like in her room, we literally had a rug and like I think I bought a cute basket from Anthropology for toys. We had and I tried to think in terms of multi-use items, things like that. So her bassinet could also be converted into like a playpen if we wanted to go spend the night somewhere else or whatever. So that was her bassinet. It was really a travel bassinet, but we did things like that. And my mom bought us our car seat, and for one of our baby shower gifts, we got this like a crazy baby food making contraption. And I was like, I don't need that. I just need a steamer basket and a blender, things like that. We really just kind of kept it minimum. And sort of bought things as we needed them. To speak to your point about the crib, we just got ours from IKEA. And we did end up selling it on Facebook Marketplace. It had no bite marks on it. The buyer was very impressed with the quality. But other than that, when I got pregnant, we immediately opened a savings account that we would eventually transfer to a 529 for her. But that was really kind of our thinking and our approach.
I love it. I love the minimalist approach. I want to hear your experience, Gail. What were some big ticket items, or where did you spend that you still have some money left in that baby savings account?
So, first of all, came into just like the childbirth itself. And I knew that my company, if I did the high deductible plan, once I hit my deductible, everything was covered at 100% for the rest of the year. So we did that, and my son was born in February. So as of February of that year, I didn't pay for any more healthcare, anything for myself after that for the end of the year. So that helped. Um, we You mentioned my family is on the other side of the country. However, every time we go there, we bring two big suitcases and we fill half with our stuff that we need for while we're there, and then we just cram it full full of hand-me-downs from my nephew. So clothes, toys, nursing supplies, just every time we go, we just bring back tons and tons of stuff. We did get some of the bigger ticket items like car seat and crib. Family contributed to those during the baby shower, and then anything we've needed since my son has been born, we typically look on Facebook Marketplace. So we've both bought and sold many things on there. A lot of times I will look online, find like at the actual company that I want, and then go look for it on Facebook Marketplace. And ideally do that a little bit in advance so I have time to like check a few times. And that has really helped a lot. And then doing things like going to the library. So we go to the library every week, and we've got a bookshelf with some books, but it's not like endless because they're really expensive. So we go to the library, or right now we're trying to do experiences with our son, and a lot of it is like, let's go to a new park or a new playground or something else that's free or very low cost, and we can pack a picnic or something. Um, but we also didn't set up a fancy nursery. My son's room is still the guest room, so it still has the guest bed, and we just kind of fit his crib and changing station and a glider seat in there. All of them, except for the crib, were from Facebook Marketplace. So we're just looking for the ways to save money so that we can spend money on the things that matter most to us as a family.
Okay, my favorite part of both of your answers to this question is just how thoughtful you are about these expenses, especially in light of babies are only babies for a short period of time, and they're not really cognizant in terms of memories back to how beautiful their nursery was or how many fancy toys they had. And I think that this is where, I mean, you're both wealthy women and you are thinking so intentionally. I think this is where a lot of American women get swindled, quite frankly. Like they think that they need the best, the newest, the chicest, everything. And, you know, I joke everything now is grayish, right? It's like kind of gray, kind of beige. It is chic, but it's also a little sad sometimes. Anyways, those are my personal opinions coming into childhood toy design. But yeah, I mean, this is, especially for you both only having one, like this is a moment, this is not forever. So I think it's really impressive that you all have done it in this way. Okay, let's shift to talking about birth. The average out-of-pocket cost for childbirth with insurance in the US is $2,800, more if you have a C-section, which I did. But to Gail's point, I had the high deductible plan chosen because we were having a baby that year. Unfortunately, my baby wasn't until August, so I didn't get the whole year comped, but that is a hot tip for people who are going to be having their baby early in the year. Yeah. Gail, walk me through your birth and birth costs.
So I was induced. It did end up being a emergency C-section. I know that's pretty common. And so I was actually digging through receipts this weekend because I was like, I don't know, that was all blur. I don't remember what it cost, but I think it cost us somewhere between $5,000 and $6,000 out of pocket. So our still to this day, our choice is I am on my own insurance, and then my son is on my husband's insurance. It's just that it works out to save us money that way. So even though my deductible was 3,000, and I hit that very quickly, we still had my husband's deductible to meet. But so 5 to 6,000 when I had 17,000 in my baby fund meant we were able to front load his 529 with a lot of money before he was one. So that was nice.
Love it. Desiree, what about you?
Yeah, so I had my baby at a birthing center with a midwife, and because of the whole layoff, got a new job situation, we didn't have insurance at the time that I got pregnant, and so we ended up like opting to do a medical cost sharing group at the time. And so technically my pregnancy was considered a pre-existing condition, but we could still submit the bill to them and people could just opt to give us money for it. And several people did, which helped with the cost. I want to say the cost was just around $5,000 out of pocket for the whole prenatal, pregnancy, postpartum care, and everything. So.
And I do have to ask, because I was so interested in using a birthing center. How did you like it?
Absolutely loved it. Loved it so much. It was perfect for me and for us. Even having, a bit of a complication after she was born, I had, to get into the nitty-gritty, I had difficulty delivering the placenta, but the midwives were on it. They handled it beautifully. It was a great experience for us. Yeah.
So we are more diverse on this call in that way too. Gail, you planned on a hospital birth?
I did, yes.
Okay. Desiree planned on a birth center birth, and then I planned on a home birth, which ended up in the hospital. But, multiple ways to have your child as well, and different costs associated with it. So what about prepping for any sort of income change, either during maternity or after? Because obviously you're going to have hopefully a healthy pregnancy, but sometimes it is harder at the end depending on your situation. And then everyone has a varying degree of what amount of time they want to spend with their child after birth, and jobs and households that allow for different timelines. So, Gail, what did you do?
So I knew that I was going to get 12 weeks time off for maternity leave between my company's parental benefit and short-term disability benefit. I was able to get, I believe, 8 of those 12 weeks paid. And so we have to do timesheets at my company. And so I was able to fill out the timesheets in a way that I think I only had 2 weeks unpaid, like completely unpaid at the very beginning. And then the rest of the time, I just chose to get less than a full paycheck. So I still had a paycheck coming in each time when I would normally get a paycheck. My husband had 6 weeks of time off. So he took 4 weeks off at the beginning. I also reserved 2 weeks of my parental leave, like my paid parental leave from my company. And so later on, in when my son was about 8.5 months old, we were able to take an international trip with him and introduce him to family overseas and have our time be paid for. Um, and so my plan had originally been take those 12 weeks off. And then I actually worked with a life coach that I met through Factora while I was pregnant to really wrap my head around, like, what do I want to do? Because I knew I was basically a workaholic and I did not want to be, but I didn't know what I wanted it to look like. So I had told my company that I was going to come back originally at 20 hours a week for the first, I think, 2 months when I came back, and then gradually bump up to 30 hours a week and then come back full time. And after a couple months at 20 hours a week, we just realized collectively as a family that, like, this is where we need to be. I am happier in all facets of my life working 20 hours a week. I love my job. I really do enjoy what I get to do. So I still get to do that and keep my skills fresh, but I get extra time with my little boy and time for myself. And we are fortunate enough that financially we are able to plan for that. And so that's just where we're going now. I'm part time for the foreseeable future, which is amazing.
It is amazing. And if I was a listener, I would want to know if that was something your company had offered other people, or how did you make this situation occur?
It is something that, so my company is, I think it's like 128 years old. So I mean, it's been around for a long time, and there are people who have worked there for 40 years. So they want you there for your entire career, and I think they recognize that people have different phases in their life. And so it was actually my group manager, when I got pregnant, was a woman, and she was the one who asked me, what do you want it to be when you come back? And she gave some examples of how women had come back at different amounts and kind of how they gradually came back to full time. And there are principals at my company who worked part time for a year or a few years while they had young children. There's still a woman in my office who is an associate, which is like another level up in the company, and she remains part time. I think she does 25 hours a week, and she's a manager, and like there is very much precedent in my company, and I love that because it does make me want to work there for a long time because they recognize this is my time with my family and this is what's important to me. I killed myself for many companies and I'm not going to do that anymore, but I will still do really good work for you if you let me live the life that I want to live.
Oh, got teary eyed on that one. Yeah. I mean, the fact that your company has a precedent for it, that you had a manager who gave you examples of what's been done and asked you how you wanted to do it. I do think that there needs to be more companies like that. So I'm really glad that we're getting some airtime for companies who've been around a long time and who get it. It's not always about just killing yourself to work to get to the next career level. Like, usually we're going through our careers so that we can have nice family lives. So when it's family time, we need to be able to be in that life too, wholeheartedly.
One other important thing is within our benefit package, as long as you work 20 hours a week, you are eligible for full benefits. And my healthcare doesn't cost any more. Obviously, I'm getting paid a little less in my 401k because, it's based on how much I'm working. But other than that, my benefits stay the same. So that is also a huge part of the consideration. I know sometimes going part time, it gets more expensive to have healthcare. And so that's another thing I'm really grateful for.
This is a high class company you work for. Okay. Desiree, what about you?
Yeah, so for us, it wasn't really so much like a consideration. We had this kind of conversation when we were engaged. And so we sort of had this talk, sort of during premarital counseling time. What did we want our family life to look at? And we sort of made the decision then and really stuck to it that we only ever wanted to live off of one income, and then any other income would just be extra for savings or goals or whatever. And so we were just sort of already set up for it. And so when I didn't feel like going back, it wasn't a big deal. It was just like, okay, that's fine. We're ready to go. Because as a therapist, that is a time for money trade. That's basically an hourly wage. And so there is no salary unless you're working somewhere like a hospital, which is going to absolutely run you into the ground. There's no benefits. There's no anything like that. It's, having your own business, you're your own everything. You have to provide everything for yourself. So that was a consideration.
So I really love this, and we could probably do a whole separate podcast episode on this, but I've always had this thought that we started corporate America. Well, let me backtrack. Men started corporate America and they made a 9 to 5, 5 day a week work week that works really well for them. Women are more cyclical, right? We've got periods, we have children, we have typically, not always, but in a lot of family structures, women are counted on to take care of aging relatives as well. And so these are interruptions to just a drone-like career path where you work for 40 years nonstop, 9 to 5, 5 days a week, don't complain, just keep going. And what I think is so interesting is that there's a lot of commentary around it, around wanting like full equity in the workplace with men. And I personally don't. I want a workplace that works for women. Like, I like that Gail's job offers flexibility. I like the company I'm building that has mostly women working at it, so we can be really focused on what works for women. And then Desiree, your ability to, in premarital counseling, discuss the type of family structure you wanted where you can live off one income and the rest is just extra. It's so awesome to me because we used to be able to afford a family on one income. And then as women came into the workplace, it's gotten a lot harder, but it's also doable if you're careful with lifestyle creep and you're still investing along the way. Like, it is feasible, depending on your career path and all of that. But I really like that outlook that you made that decision and you stuck to that decision and you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
So we've talked about kind of the preparation and early motherhood costs. Let's switch to the day-to-day costs that you experience now. So average cost of raising a kid in the US, $230,000. That's only considering until they're 18. Yes, that's the adult age in the US, but I'm sure we all know a lot of people who had help financially from their parents beyond that. And that cost does not include the choice of private school. So what are some financial costs that have surprised you most so far about having children? Desiree, let's start with you. Since you've got a 5-year-old, you've had more time to have more costs.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, aside from childcare, which we kind of already discussed, because obviously not every day is a good day. And on days when they're really hard, I'm like, forget this. How much does the Montessori school over here cost? And I'm like, never mind, I'll keep doing what I'm doing. That is, I just don't want to send my money there. But other than that, I think, and I think of kind of toys as an investment a lot. It's one of those things where I don't know if this is true for you guys, but I'm like, I think the toys are really cute. and I have toys that I want to buy because I think they look fun, and so really keeping track of that, um, and thinking about, being intentional. What do we have space for in our home? What's going to be multi-use for her? What is going to grow with her? And things like that, and what can be um, just kind of like used in lots of different ways. And there have even been toys that we had as a baby that we got rid of because we're like, okay, she's moved on. But then she has asked for it again. Like she's like, what happened to this toy that I had? And things like that. So I think that's been kind of like both a big cost and a good way to sort of be intentional with your money is like, what kinds of things are you buying for your kid to entertain them with? And how does that work into your whole home and family ecosystem? And so getting a lot of longevity out of those kinds of things, I think, is important.
And what about any upcoming expenses now that she's 5? And did you say you're considering stopping homeschool at some point, or do you want to continue? Do you know? You don't have to know.
No, no, I do only on bad days. Only on bad days am I like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. But that hasn't happened in a while. I do think I want to keep homeschooling. I'm actually really enjoying it. I do have a high yield savings account, sort of like sinking fund, where I put about $100 a month in there to save for curriculum, supplies, things like that. And that can be as cheap or as expensive as you want it to be. I did splurge for the nice North American Montessori Center, whatever, Montessori Association. I did splurge for their preschool curriculum, and it's been great. She loves it, and I'm having fun with it. So things like that, like I think Gail mentioned, books are expensive. So yeah, learning how to use your library, learning how to put books on hold or request books that they don't have yet, has been a big thing. Kind of speaking to the experiences type of stuff, I also have in that same savings account, we save for things like museum memberships, zoo memberships, other like dance lessons, or we do a thing called Tinker Garden, and signing up for those things early, they'll usually give you a discount. So just kind of things like that is where a lot of our expenses are.
The lucky kid. That's what I'm sitting here being like, oh, Lou, I got to step it up for you, girl.
Well, listen, my rule for me is if it's not fun for me, we're not doing it. So that's that's kind of the balance here. It has to be fun for both of us.
That's a good rule. What about you, Gail? Where have there been high costs, either that you've already incurred or upcoming?
I'd say daycare, honestly, is probably the biggest thing, which, as I mentioned with when they were going to raise the cost, that was just like, no, no, I'm not paying that. There's got to be a better option. But other things like diapers, um, just kind of those day-to-day expenses, toys. I mean, there are so many different toys that you could get. And the fact that I can have the most great, the most wonderful toy possible, and then my son wants to go play in the Tupperware cabinet. Like I also keep that in mind. Because he literally just wants to play in the Tupperware cabinet. He doesn't really care about the other stuff sometimes. So we, um, if there's something that we want to splurge on, like a toy, for example, if it's on Amazon, we'll put it in the cart and then like leave it there for a little while and come back to it a few weeks later and then be like, do we still want this? And in which case, okay, we earn money for a reason, right? We can splurge and buy him something every once in a while, but we try to keep it, um, as Desiree was mentioning, to things that will last for a long time or he'll get other uses out of, rather than being like very one dimensional.
More intention, just the most intention with these moms, listeners. I'm taking a lot of notes. So, Desiree, I heard you talk about a savings account, kind of sinking fund. I know that you're both very financially minded. So let's get to the meat of this episode. What are you doing to prepare for your kids' futures? Are either of you already investing for college or any other sort of education costs, utilizing a 529 plan? We got any custodial brokerages set up? Anything that you're thinking of there? We'll start with you, Desiree.
Yeah, so like I said, when we got pregnant, I was actually kind of irritated because they won't let you open a 529 until the baby's actually born. And so I was like, what do you mean I have to wait? And so I just opened a savings account. But so we do have a 529 for her. Pre-Factora, I kind of had this moment where I panicked and I was like, what if she doesn't want to go to college and we can't use the money? But they are a bit more flexible with those now. So we have that. And then we were eligible for the government tax credit a few years ago now. And so I just took that money and opened a UTMA account, which is I forget what that stands for, but it's basically a gift account to a minor, and that'll be hers when she's 18, an investment account. And so we have that one. And then we have a couple of side businesses. And so I am looking, hopefully in the next year, to get her on the payroll somehow and start paying her out of there to, defer the income tax to her and then open up a custodial Roth for her. That's a goal for the next year.
So all the things.
All the things.
These are so good. I have a feeling people are scribbling down all the names of all of those. Gail, what have you got going on for your son?
We also have a 529, and we had a goal of front loading it with $10,000 before he was 1, and we were able to do that. And now we just contribute $200 a month to that. And then, and from our standpoint, both my husband and myself went to private high school for part of our high school and felt like it was life changing. So we're not sure if the money will be used for private high school or towards college or both. But we know that we like that 529s are flexible in that we can use it for all of those different things. And then we also opened the custodial brokerage account, which I think is the UTMA, if I'm not mistaken. And so we did open one of those for our son as well. And right now I think it has like $100 in it. Basically, it's been any money that he got as birthday gifts from grandparents, and then we every once in a while put a little bit into it. We're still kind of determining what our strategy is for that and setting like a defined goal, but eventually we want to be able to actually show him and have him like help learn or help him learn how to use it, and that investing isn't scary.
So, just so listeners know what UTMA stands for, it's Uniform Transfers to Minor Act, and it refers to a law that allows a minor to receive gifts without the aid of a guardian or trustee. So, gifts can include money, patents, royalties, real estate, and fine art. But yes, these UTMA accounts at brokerage firms are taxable investment accounts. And it's a pretty cool way to have money invested for your kids. Gail, you did a lot of research on 529 plans, and I know there's been a lot of conversation in the Factora community and guidance led by you and that research. Can you just explain to listeners what a 529 plan is and where you got yours? Because you live in Texas, but...
Yes, I do live in Texas, and I chose the New York 529. So you do not have to choose the one that is from your state. In some states, there are tax benefits to doing so, to choosing the one that is from your state, but in Texas, that is not the case. And so a 529 lets you put in money into an account that then grows tax free and can be used on a ton of different education expenses, whether that's tuition, room, board, textbooks, laptops, like a ton of different things. And it can be for elementary school, middle school, high school, college. I believe that you can even use it to pay off student loans, like a certain amount of student loans long term. And so we did a lot of research. I am the family analyzer of all things. And so eventually I just had to be like, all right, Gail, just choose one. My goodness. And I kind of got stuck in the wheel for a little bit, but I went with the New York plan because they have, you can choose an aggressive, moderate, or conservative age-based option. So you say when your child was born, and then I think we started with the um, moderate. I can't remember if we started with the moderate or aggressive portfolio. And basically, it's like a target date fund in that what it is investing in will get gradually safer and safer as your child gets closer to the age of needing that money. It's been very smooth and absolutely set it and forget it. Like, I don't think about it at all, other than making sure the money is in our bank account for it to automatically be withdrawn each month.
And Desiree, where is your 529 plan?
I don't know. It's at Fidelity.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's there and it's growing. I didn't do that much research. It was 5 years ago. But yeah, I don't know. I should look into that.
Yeah, well, both of you are ahead of me. I do not have a 529 plan. I've done a lot of consideration in terms of real estate investing and how those home purchases in 18-ish years from now will be at a value that would be useful for certain education expenses. But I feel convinced, Gail, I might have to talk to you a little bit more about 529s because of the flexibility of that New York plan and some of the other ones that were mentioned. Well, this has been such a great episode. In wrapping up, I would just love to know if there's any additional wisdom you have to share with women who are planning to have kids, mostly from the financial aspect, either something you wish you'd known or something you're really glad that you have put in place. Anything that maybe you haven't shared yet on the episode, I just want to give you a chance to say it now or wait till the next Mother's Day.
I'll start. And so, key things I would say is I think it's really important to prioritize spending on the things that are most important to you and your family. And so, for us, spending time with family and travel are two really strong values that we have. And so, we find ways to save money in other areas so that we can take my son to Spain. And part of our one and done consideration is I want to travel with this kid. I want to take him all over the world. And that gets doubly expensive as soon as there's another one. Um, but so making sure like spending money isn't bad. I just want to make sure that we're spending it on the things that mean the most to us as a family. And the only other thing I would say is I am extremely grateful that we saved money so that I could have the flexibility to determine how I wanted or if I wanted to return to the workforce. Becoming a mother was a change like I could not even fathom before. And I had no idea that that's really all I would want to do with my day. And so giving myself the flexibility to come back in the way that feels the best to us and still be able to save and invest, I think was great. So budgeting and prioritizing spending on what you value.
So
Yeah.
good. Desiree, what
Yeah.
about you?
I would definitely agree with that. I think, Allegra, as you've been pointing out, just being intentional about, take the time to think about sort of the picture you have for your family. What do you want your day to feel like? What do you want your home to feel like after you have a baby? What do you want kind of the rhythm of your life to be like? Um, I would recommend a book that I loved while I was pregnant called Simplicity Parenting. And it's basically just kind of the idea that you don't need a lot of fluff, you don't need a lot of stuff. Like simple things make for the best childhoods, and that's okay. And that's definitely been true for us. And again, speaking to that, just intentionality um, about what you want your life as a mother to look like. I have always wanted to be a mom. And even after becoming a mom, like I thought I would want to keep working through pregnancy and I thought I would want to go back to work. But, like you said, like nope, this is what I want to do. Like I just want to hang out with my kid all day. And like that's fun to me and I can do that. And I'm really thankful that we set up our life to do that. Um, and for those other Factora ladies who want to teach their kids about money, I have really enjoyed starting to teach my daughter about money now that she's 5. The FDIC has a free curriculum, and she is actually really enjoying it. And so I give her a little tiny $8 allowance every week. And it's really cool to see how she divides it up, and she divides it up pretty equally between spending, saving, sharing, and investing. And so I have let her go into her UTMA account, and she chose Costco because we buy a lot of snacks from Costco. And so she has bought her little tiny fractional shares of Costco. She clicks the buttons on the computer with me. And so that's super fun now to get to like pass that along to her.
So inspiring, so adorable. And yeah, I actually really love our parents channel in the Slack community because we can talk about this. We can talk about 529 plans and how to educate our children so that they can be thoughtful about money. At least in my world, way before I was, which really didn't click for me until late in my 20s. And I don't want that for my daughter. I want her to feel empowered by money for as many years as she can, as early as possible. So this has been such a great episode. I really appreciate you both, your time, and sharing your mothering knowledge and financial elements with us. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
If you enjoyed this episode, come join us in a Well Circle. It's our live, online, 12-week course and community where we teach you how to create a personalized financial plan alongside hundreds of other women building wealth. It will change your life and your money for good. You can apply at factorawealth.com/wealth circle. That's factorawealth.com/wealth circle. See you in the next episode.